Could military-aged Ukrainian men soon face tougher rules on refugee protections across parts of Europe? Switzerland is considering new restrictions that could reshape refugee status rules for some Ukrainians. A controversial proposal is raising questions over whether draft-age men could face reduced benefits if exemptions are tightened. And as the debate spreads across Europe, could special protections for conscription-age men soon come under greater scrutiny? Switzerland is considering possible restrictions on refugee protections for military-aged Ukrainian men. The proposal is part of a broader review of existing protection measures. The Swiss Federal Council has announced consultations on extending the special protection status granted to Ukrainian nationals. The review will examine how the program should operate going forward. Around 66,000 Ukrainian nationals currently live in Switzerland under the country's S-Status Protection Scheme. The program was introduced following the escalation of the conflict in Ukraine. The protection scheme provides welfare support and allows beneficiaries to travel freely across borders. It also grants temporary residency rights and access to various public services. Swiss officials said a decision on possible restrictions could be reached by the end of the summer. Discussions are expected to continue in the coming months. Bern stated that the review is linked to similar discussions currently taking place within the European Union. European Union officials are reportedly assessing whether Ukrainian men of conscription age should remain eligible for special protection measures. The issue has become part of a wider migration debate. EU Migration Commissioner Magnus Brunner said Ukraine has asked its partners to consider the option. The request is linked to Ukraine's ongoing manpower requirements. More than 4 million Ukrainians currently live under temporary protection programs across the European Union. These arrangements were established after the conflict expanded in 2022. Official estimates suggest that up to 1 million of those living under protection are men of fighting age. The figure has become a key focus in policy discussions. Kyiv has repeatedly called for the return of eligible men as it faces continuing military manpower shortages. Ukrainian officials argue that additional personnel are needed to sustain defense efforts. Ukraine imposed general mobilization after the conflict escalated in February 2022. The measure was introduced to support the country's military requirements. Ukrainian men between the ages of 18 and 60 were largely barred from leaving the country under wartime regulations. The restrictions remain a central part of mobilization policy. Ukraine has increasingly relied on mandatory conscription to replenish its armed forces. Recruitment needs have grown as the conflict has continued. Several European countries have already taken steps to reduce benefits available to some Ukrainian migrants. The changes reflect evolving political and economic pressures. The debate comes as the war continues and pressure grows over Ukraine's military recruitment challenges. Governments across Europe are weighing humanitarian commitments against broader policy concerns. Ukraine's president has announced sweeping changes to military service rules and compensation structures, aimed at strengthening morale and improving retention within the armed forces. Volodymyr Zelensky said the reforms were developed after extensive consultations with senior military commanders and top government officials. The plan includes a record increase in pay for infantry soldiers, designed to better reflect frontline risks and improve recruitment in critical combat units. Additional combat bonuses are also being introduced, offering extra financial incentives for troops engaged in high-intensity operations. Fixed-term service contracts will be introduced for soldiers, providing clearer timelines and more structured career pathways within the military. A 6-month exemption from mobilization will be granted to soldiers who successfully complete their service contracts, as part of efforts to encourage re-enlistment and stability. Rules governing transfers between military units will be eased, allowing for greater flexibility and faster reallocation of personnel where they are most needed. Procedures for soldiers seeking to return to service after going absent without leave have also been simplified, aiming to bring experienced personnel back into active duty more efficiently. The defense minister said Ukraine needs a military service model built on respect, fairness, and clear rules, as part of wider efforts to reform the armed forces. Volodymyr Zelensky's government hopes the changes will improve recruitment, retention, and overall morale across the country's military ranks. A key part of the strategy includes expanding the recruitment of foreign fighters to support overstretched frontline units. Mikhailo Fedorov said Ukraine aims to fill around 30 to 50% of infantry and assault roles with foreign volunteers. Officials believe foreign volunteers could help ease pressure on domestic recruitment efforts, which have struggled under sustained wartime demands. The reforms come as Ukraine continues to face a chronic manpower shortage after years of ongoing conflict and battlefield losses. Many soldiers are reported to have spent years on the front lines without a clear pathway to demobilization or formal discharge. Officials also say a large number of troops are now exhausted after more than 3 years of intense and continuous combat operations. Newly mobilized soldiers have often been described as less motivated, particularly in high-risk infantry roles where pressure and casualties remain highest. With the Ukraine war showing no signs of ending, one NATO nation is facing growing difficulties in filling the ranks of a key military formation. The challenge has raised concerns about long-term force readiness. Germany is struggling to attract enough volunteers for deployment near Russia's borders. Officials say recruitment targets remain difficult to achieve. The brigade forms part of Germany's broader military expansion plan in Eastern Europe. The initiative is intended to strengthen NATO's eastern flank. The unit is expected to reach full operational readiness by the end of 2027 with nearly 4,800 soldiers. Current plans call for a substantial increase in personnel over the coming years. Officials say around 1,800 personnel are currently stationed with the brigade. Thousands of positions are still vacant and awaiting recruitment. Personnel shortages are most severe in specialist roles, including IT, reconnaissance, and engineering units. These positions are considered critical to the brigade's effectiveness. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius said operational readiness will take priority over voluntary service if necessary. He emphasized the importance of meeting military requirements. Germany's military leadership has warned that compulsory measures could be considered if volunteer numbers remain insufficient. The comments have intensified debate over future recruitment policies. A major recruitment campaign included barracks tours and organized trips for soldiers and their families. The effort was designed to encourage more personnel to join the deployment. Reports indicate that the campaign has failed to fully close the brigade's personnel gaps. Recruitment challenges continue despite the outreach efforts. Berlin is building up the 45th Armored Brigade as a flagship military unit based in Lithuania. The formation is expected to play a central role in regional defense planning. The unit, activated in 2025, represents Germany's first permanent foreign deployment since World War II. Its establishment marks a significant shift in German military policy. The brigade is stationed near the Belarus border and close to Russia's Kaliningrad region. The location is considered strategically important by NATO planners. German officials say the country must be prepared for the possibility of a conflict with Russia by 2029. They argue that readiness efforts cannot be delayed. Moscow has criticized NATO's expansion and accused Berlin of pursuing what it describes as revanchist militarization. Russian officials have repeatedly voiced opposition to the deployment. Russia says it has no intention of attacking NATO countries, but continues to warn against what it views as Western escalation. The Kremlin argues that further military buildup increases regional tensions.